The Daffodil Principle.
Several times my daughter had telephoned to say,
"Mother, you must come to see the daffodils before they are over."
I wanted to go, but it was a 2-hour drive from Laguna to Lake Arrowhead. "I will come next Tuesday," I promised, a little reluctantly, on her third call.
The next Tuesday dawned and was cold and rainy.
Still, I had promised, and so I drove there to Carolyn's house. When I finally walked into Carolyn's house and hugged and greeted my grandchildren, I said, "Forget the daffodils, Carolyn. The road is invisible in the clouds and fog. And there is nothing in the world except you and these children that I want to see bad enough to drive another inch." My daughter smiled calmly and said,
"We drive in this all the time, Mother."
"Well, you won't get me back on the road until it clears, and then I'm heading for home," I assured her.
"I was hoping you'd take me over to the garage to pick up my car."
"How far will we have to drive?"
"Just a few blocks," I said. "I'll drive. I'm used to this."
After several minutes, I had to ask, "Where are we going?" "This isn't the way to the garage."
"We're going to the garage the long way." I smiled. "By way of the daffodils."
I said sternly, "Please turn around."
"It's all right, Mother, I promise. You will never forgive yourself if you miss this experience."
After about 20 minutes, we turned onto a small gravel road, and I saw a church. On the far side of the church, I saw a hand-lettered sign that read, "Daffodil Garden." We got out of the car and each took a child's hand, and I followed Carolyn down the path. Then, we turned a corner of the path, and looked up and gasped. Before me lay the most glorious sight. It looked as though someone had taken a great vat of gold and poured it down over the mountain peak and slopes. The flowers were planted in majestic, swirling patterns, great ribbons and swaths of deep orange, white, lemon yellow, salmon, pink, saffron, and butter yellow. Each different colored variety was planted as a group, so that it swirled and flowed like its own river with its own unique hue. There were 5 acres of flowers. But who has done this? I asked Carolyn.
"It was just one single woman," I answered. "She lives on the property. That's her home." Anne pointed to a well-kept frame house that looked small and modest in the midst of all that glory.
We walked up to the house. On the patio, we saw a poster. "Answers to the questions I know you were asking" was the headline. The first answer was a simple one. 50,000 bulbs, it read. The second answer was, "One at a time, by one woman, with 2 hands, 2 feet, and very little brain." The third answer was, "Began in 1958.
There it was, the Daffodil Principle.
For me, that moment was a life-changing experience. I thought of this woman whom I had never met, who, more than 40 years before, had begun one bulb at a time to bring her vision of beauty and joy to an obscure mountain top. Still, just planting one bulb at a time, year after year, had changed the world.
This unknown woman had forever changed the world in which she lived. She had created something of ineffable, indescribable, magnificence, beauty, and inspiration. The principle her daffodil garden taught is one of the greatest principles of celebration. That is, learning to move towards our goals and desires, one step at a time, often just one baby step at a time, and learning to love the task. Learning to use the accumulation of time. When we multiply tiny pieces of time with small increments of daily effort, we too will find we can accomplish magnificent things. We can change our world.
It makes me sad in a way, I admitted to Carolyn. What might I have accomplished if I had thought of a wonderful goal 35 or 40 years ago, and had worked away at it one bulb at a time through all those years? Just think what I might have been able to achieve. My daughter summed up the message of the day in her usual direct way.
"Start tomorrow," I said. "It's so pointless to think of the lost hours of your yesterdays. The way to make learning a lesson of celebration instead of a cause for regret is to ask yourself, how can I put this to use today?" So, stop waiting until your car or home is paid off. Until you get a new car or home.
Until your kids leave home.
Until you clean out the garage. Until you lose 10 pounds. Until you have enough money.
Or, the other side of the coin is, don't wait. Until you get married. Until you get a divorce. Until you have kids. Until you retire. Point until summer. Until winter. Until you die.
There's no better time than right now to be happy.
You think we die and go to heaven.
I think we already are on heaven. So, work like you don't need money. Pay for all that life has and will bestow on you, forward with interest.
Love like you've never been hurt, for no one can really hurt you inside, unless you allow it.
Smile like there are no strangers.
Realize you have no aspirations to adhere to, but your own point, and dance like no one's watching.
Yes, Mum. I love you.
I love you too, darling, and I enjoyed this experience, and wish I could be more flexible before.
Mum, you don't need to wish, just do it from now on.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you, Mum.